Hello, everybody. Dave Clark from InspectCheck.net. You know, the title of this video is "I've Changed My Mind," and I have changed my mind. You're probably wondering, what have I changed my mind about? And like most home inspectors, I don't change my mind too often. Actually, I don't change my mind on a lot of things in general. But you know, I'm open to always open to new ideas and things. And so I'm going to tell you what I changed my mind about. I changed my mind about arc fault circuit breakers. Um, they first came out a long time ago. When I first started doing home inspections, they weren't around at all. As a matter of fact, ground faults were just becoming a thing, if you will, then. And there were many houses that didn't have ground faults at all. And we see now that ground faults are pretty much everywhere. And then after a few years of doing inspections, then we started seeing, then it became, I hate to use the word code, but we'll say accepted practice to use arc faults in bedroom circuits only, right? So many times we would see in newer builds, maybe 3 ground faults, one for each bedroom or 2 bedroom, whatever many bedrooms there were. And the bedroom circuits were protected. Those were the first type of ground faults, so branch feeder or branch arc faults, whatever you want to call them. They weren't the newer combination type, and there were a lot of nuisance tripping. I remember clients calling me saying, "Oh, these things are driving me nuts." I had a friend build a new build and had an electrician change them out because they were driving them nuts. You know, they were very sensitive, and if you had any type of arc, you know, you plugged in a vacuum cleaner, you would get an arc and it would trip it. You have to go down the basement or wherever it was and put it back on. Sometimes it would just keep tripping, driving people crazy. So at that time, they seemed to be more of a nuisance, but I understood the reason behind that. You know, fast forward to now where they're required just about everywhere. And I'll read you right out of the NEC, a synopsized version of what it says. But really, if you look at fires that start, and there's a lot of different stats out there, so I'm not gonna, you know, tell you that I researched it, but somewhere between 50 and 75% of fires are started by arc faults, and or I'm sorry, yes, by arc faults, and so that's a pretty big number when you look at it. And it could be for any other reason, and that's part of the reason that the branch feeder it is not as desired as the combination. So now they're really required to be combination. And I would tell you that if I did not see a combination arc fault breaker, I would call that out. Let me just tell you a little bit. Let me read to you what the NEC requires. And I want to explain the difference. It says the NEC has been updated requiring combination type arc fault uh, uh, circuit breakers on all 120 volt single phase 15 to 20 amp branch circuits, and it could be even more than that too, but it depends, on outlets or devices installed in new dwelling units and any retrofit or something. This includes almost every room in a house and in a hotel, dormitory, hospital, anything like that. So AFCIs, right? Arc fault circuit interrupters need to be in those areas. So basically, it's just about everywhere, and the combination is the best. So I want to be clear on this. A combination arc fault circuit interrupter is not a arc fault and a ground fault together. That's a dual breaker. Big difference, because a combination arc fault is not also a branch feeder arc fault. A branch feeder, there's certain requirements to install those because they're only going to detect whatever is right on that feed, right? Where a combination will detect other areas. So let me give you an example. So you plug a cord in, a lamp cord. This is always, you talk to electricians all the time. Someone says, I only use 12 gauge wire and 20 amp breakers. Well, that's not always a great idea either. So let's take a living room. You know, what do you need a 20 amp breaker and 12 gauge wire in there? I don't know, unless you have an air conditioner you're plugging in or something. But really, you'd rather probably have you know, a 14 gauge wire with a 15 amp breaker there, because what's getting plugged into that circuit? You always have to look at, you know, a circuit's kind of like a chain. What's the weakest link? And the answer is maybe a lamp. And do you ever see the lamp cord? Although they're stranded, you know, they're not a heavy gauge lamp. So if there's an issue with that lamp, the combination breaker should trip. And so that's why it's definitely the better breaker, and less nuisance tripping now. The newer ones are also, many of them have a light on them that tells you if they're installed properly, but that's what we're looking for, a combination AFCI. If that's there, I'm happy. If it's not, I'm going to recommend that they upgrade it. Not a big deal, you know, at least there's something there anyway, but it's definitely the better one. The other part of the equation is there's many different ways to install them. We're not going to get into that today, but a branch feeder has to be installed differently than a combination. Like you have to use hard cable, like an AC cable or BX cable to the first one, unless there's a receptacle. We don't see a lot of receptacles. I've seen only a couple, and that's why we put it in our report really in the panel. Not to say that they can't be there, but we don't see them. We see more ground fault receptacles and definitely much more arc fault. And the whole idea with the arc fault is it's protecting them, you know, right from the box all the way out from that arc, where a ground would be more at the site of where that receptacle is. So with that said, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Square D, and I'm going to just synopsize this. I'm not going to have a real long video, but let's take a look at the Square D. Could I say a brand name? I think so. So I'm sharing my screen with you now. I'm going to make it bigger. This one is really nice because it doesn't, and I wanted to show you this too, because this type of breaker, this type of box, I should say, is the neutrals are here. Here's our neutral, and I'll do it in blue. And you'll see that there's the neutral. It goes all the way down. So you're saying, what's going on? Because you're not going to see a pigtail in these. The neutral actually makes the connection right here. So our neutral would come in from somewhere, and we'll make that, I don't know, we'll make that green. Well, no, that's going to be ground. Let's make it light blue. The neutral would come in here and go here, right? And then our hot would go, obviously, to the breaker, and that's it, right? There's no pigtail coming out of that breaker. So the Square D, I think they're called a QO panel. Very nice. Let me show you how that actually works. So I want you to understand that here is the breaker. Again, it's a special breaker. You can't use any breaker. And you'll see that right here is our neutral connection. Notice how there's no pigtail coming out of there. And then, of course, that's our hot. But there's no pigtail. Very nice, clean panel. I know that some were recalled. I'm not sure if it was them or somebody else were recalled, but I understand that's all cleared up now. So this is a nice way to do it. But if you see a pigtail, that's okay too. So let's take a look at them. And here is the difference between the two. Let me make this a little bit bigger. So the combination type, right? Arc fault breakers help provide protection against dangerous arcing, precursor to many electrical fires. Square D, QO. That's what we're just looking at here, but it doesn't have to be that, right? And home line combination, that's what that is. CAFE, sometimes they call it. Help protect people on property from fires caused by electrical arcing. These devices continuously monitor the branch circuit and trip when a potentially hazardous condition is detected. Many of these also have a light on them. Talk about that in a quick second. And then a dual function, okay? Again, this is a combination, this is a dual. So a dual is just simply a combination, arc fault and ground fault. And that ground fault is a combination. So I shouldn't use the word combination, but a dual does both. Okay, so a great way to do business. If you have a room that needs arc fault and ground fault protection, this is absolutely the way to go. All right, so I just want to give you this little blurb here from Square D. And this is from them. It says the QO load center will have an extended neutral lug on both sides. We just saw that in the picture above that I just showed you. The specific plug-on neutral circuit breaker of this load center connect at the rear of the breaker to the extended neutral lug. Okay, perfect. The extended neutral lug goes all the way down the panel. Neutral pigtails are not present. All right, so if you don't see them, look for this type of panel. If you see an arc fault or ground fault circuit breaker with a pigtail, it's not the proper breaker for this one. So I don't know why you would see that, but maybe they just put it in, you know, somebody put it in wrong. All right, so I want to just bring you back to here. All right, so this is what the panel would look like. This is the extended part, right, that I already showed you. So right here. This is the extended part of the neutral. Notice how it's coming off the neutral. So this is new. I'm doing it in red, but you get the idea. Okay, so normally we would see just an arc fault with a pigtail coming out, just like the ground fault. I don't really need to show you that. I think everybody understands what that is. But something that I think is a really good is really good now, and I've changed my mind on it. I actually think that they definitely provide a lot of protection, and as a home inspector, that's what I would be looking for. So what would we be looking for when we're examining these? Well, many of the arc faults and now the newer ground faults, they have a light on. So I know that our standards of practice a lot of times say we should trip, press the test button. We're limited by that. Sometimes some of us have a tester with a button for the ground fault that's out there in the living space. But what I would say is this: take a look inside that panel, okay? And if there's the light on, if it's a green light or whatever light color they use, and that's on, then I would say it's fine because it's internally checking all the time. So if the light is on the ground fault and or arc fault or dual unit, whatever it is, I would say that's fine. I don't think it's necessary to test it. You know, we're down in the basement, we press the test button. Now what? We're going to run upstairs and see if those circuits, if we could find them. Hopefully they're labeled, but I don't think that that's necessary for us to do that. If it's lit, it's fine. Same thing with the ground fault. Now, you know, a lot of the newer ground faults do have lights in them, but you know, there's still a lot of old ones that don't. If that light is green, it's doing internal checking and it's saying that it's okay. So I would say if the light is on, the proper light. Now, if it's obviously if there's a red light on or there's an issue, then I would definitely call that out as a problem. So how would we call that out as a problem? Let's take a look. Let's go to our report, and we're going to go right over to electrical. And I'm going to go to, now for ground faults, it's a little bit different. Okay, my screen sharing and then it's unsharing. Okay, so let me just show you this real quick. For ground faults, they have their own section over here because why? Because they're mostly in the living space, even though that seems to be changing a little bit. But where are they located? So we could actually see where they're located. Arc faults should be everywhere else anyway. So it would make sense to put its own section for arc fault because we would, would be all over the place, right? Because now they have to be everywhere. I just read you what it said. So we're going to put that in the service panel. Okay, and we can put where the service panel is located, disconnects, all that, sub panels, but we're going to come all the way down. So if the arc faults are good, we're happy, right? We're happy. Okay, but if there's a problem with the arc fault in the panel, this is what we're going to check. So the arc fault circuit interrupter circuit breaker did not respond to test button or light, depending on whatever way you want to put. So it says if an arc fault circuit is detected, arc faults are normally used for interior branch circuits where ground fault circuit interrupters are not required. Recommend evaluation repair by a licensed electrician. So no question. Now, if you want to change that to light, that's fine, but the test button is what our standards of practice are, so we leave it at that. And we have the same thing here for ground fault too. So the ground faults, the newer ones, again, in the panel, have a light. If that light is not on, then we're going to make a note of it here. But I don't really press that test button too much anymore because the light is constantly monitoring to make sure that that is working properly. So that's it. So I changed my mind. Now I think arc faults are great. And I think another thing too is even if the house is older and they have to update that service, most municipalities will require them to use arc faults. But I say this to you, even if it's not, depending on what you see, I have recommended that they replace some circuits with combination arc faults and or combination dual units, which is, a combination arc fault and a ground fault. So I hope this helps you out. I know I got a couple questions about how come I'm seeing ground faults that don't have a pigtail coming out of the back. But they do have pigtails coming out of the back. And unless they see this one panel that doesn't, because that neutral is all the way down and connecting to a specific type of breaker. So that doesn't mean that it was installed properly. You know, do a little research on that and you'll see that the Square D one doesn't require a pigtail. I think you're going to see a lot of other manufacturers already going in that direction, making breakers for that. It makes for a cleaner box, less clutter in there. But either way, if they have a pigtail coming out, make sure that that pigtail goes to the neutral. That's it. If it's a main service panel, it would go to the neutral. That's bonded to the ground. If it's in a sub panel, it would not go to the ground. It would go to the neutral lug. Okay, so I hope that cleared it up a little bit for you. And yes, we can change our minds sometimes. So I think for the better. Please subscribe and we'll get some more videos out. If you have any questions, by all means, send them over. And I'd love to do videos. I've got a lot of stuff to share. So please hit the subscribe button. You can also go to homeinspectortrainingonline.com for more of these and even our blog too. A lot of extra training stuff. So till we see you again, have a great day.